If you would like to purchase a pre-printed fabric panel, please go to spoonflower.com and type Kathy Schmitz in the search bar without any spaces. You can also hold your phone's camera over the QR code and a small yellow tab will pop up. Click on the tab and it will take you to my Spoonflower shop. Please order a fat quarter on Petal Signature Cotton. Thanks! And here is October. We have a friendly little jack-o'-lantern who I'm using as a vase for some fall foliage there. So a couple things I wanted to point out to begin with is, you know, I had this thing about what's in front and back. So I would stitch the pumpkin first and then stitch the stems because they're on the outside of that part of the pumpkin. So they need to be on top. So I've done that on that one. Now I'm gonna pop over here. I'm just gonna stitch over right on top of those previous pumpkin lines. Now for this leaf, I think it's kind of a fun one because all it is made up of is fly stitches once we get the center seam stitched up. So this is a stem stitch and we're just going straight up the middle. Now I'm going to go to one side of one of the loops. Like that. Okay. So doing a fly stitch, I'm going to have my thread go up and I'm going to put my needle down right on the other side and up at the tip. My thread's going to go under the needle and I'm going to pull away and tack it right on the other side. Now I can come down to this next little loop. So I'm going to start at that indent, come down and bring my needle to this indent and then up at the edge of the farthest part of the loop. My thread's going to go under the needle, pull away, and tack it in place. So these make super, super simple, quick little oak leaves, fly stitches. And just like that, we're going to have a little leaf. Now, if you can tell, there's a little bit of a difference between my little print and yours, because I learned a lesson, and so I changed it on yours, but I didn't have it changed on mine, and that is I didn't color in these berries on this one, but I did on yours. And that will really help when you're doing your satin stitches, because if your stitches aren't perfect, the blue is going to show from underneath instead of the white like in mine. Maybe I'll go this side. So remember up here in March where that was colored blue underneath? And so even though those French knots aren't all touching each other, you just see the blue of the fabric under there. So it looks like it is filled in. So if these berries were filled in, like on your fabric, then your stitches are going to look better because you're not going to see that any of this white if your threads don't line up. So the way I like to do a satin stitch on something this big is I like to start in the middle from one side to the other and then come up. I'm going to go back and forth because my thread is variegated, and I've learned that if I do this side and then do that side, if my thread changes color, I might have a real definite change along that line. So now I'm going to come down on this side and then on top of that initial stitch. And with satin stitches, you don't want to pull the thread too tight because you don't want it to pucker. You just want it to lie nice and flat. Go across again. And I think that the best advice I could give is just to practice and to take your time. I like to stem stitch pretty quickly, but with satin stitch, I try to slow down and really take my time. And you can use your thumb to kind of manipulate where you want those threads to be, kind of push them next to each other. This is going to be a dark blueberry. And remember, if you don't like it, you can always take it out and do it again too. And sometimes this is a stitch that is helpful to have in a hoop. I think we just need one more at the bottom and one more at the top. And then you can see at the very top of this berry, we have these little marks up here. Those are itty bitty, itty bitty, itty bitty, smallest ever lazy daisies. And we've done some of those on some other months, but I'll show you again. So you're going to start at the tip of the berry, like that. Bring your thread up and around so it kind of forms that loop. Bring your needle down in the same hole that you came up in, and then at the tip of the loop, your thread's going to go under the needle, pull away from you, and tack in place. And that is my little berry. It isn't a perfect circle. It's a little oblong. And I love it because it's unique and it's not perfect, because nothing is perfect, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do a few more stitches on some of these other berries, and then we'll move to the face. So I finished this side of the pumpkin and some of the lines, and these lines are stem stitches, which we've gone over in the previous months. And this mouth, you can see how it's a little bit wider than just a line. So what I am going to do for it is I'm going to do 2 rows of stem stitches touching each other. Sometimes I call this a stem fill because I'm filling the area in. So super easy. You're just going to do literally 2 lines of stem stitches right next to each other. Oop, I didn't get that needle quite where I wanted. There we go. Okay. So the only thing I would do differently is, instead of carrying my thread on the outside, because it is a curve and I normally would, I want those threads to kind of lean in and touch that upper lip. So I'm going to carry my thread on the other side, just for this. And now his mouth is a little thicker and makes a little bit more of a statement. Come up here for the nose. So there's his mouth. And then the nose and the eyes are going to be a satin stitch. It's not going to take very many. And you just start at the bottom, and they're going to get tinier and tinier as you get closer to the point. Just remember not to pull it tight, because you don't want the fabric to pucker up. And one thing I've noticed on this fabric, maybe you have too, it's a little stiff when you first get it because it's a digital print from Spoonflower. That means that the ink is just printed directly on top of the fabric. And so it's a little stiffer that way. When you are using a really good fabric, like for quilting, like a Moda fabric, the way they print the design is the fabric is wet. And so it actually absorbs the ink instead of just having the ink printed on top like this. And that's why, one of the reasons why it's a lot softer. Plus they have other things they put it through to make it nice and soft and lovely. But as I'm working with this one, it's getting softer and softer just from my hands touching it so much. And there's one eye. Boop. So we're almost done with his face. And our little jack-o'-lantern for October is all stitched up. I did make some of these lazy daisies a little bit bigger than what the drawn pattern was, just because they were so tiny. I had a hard time making them that small. So we just had a few different stitches this month, but I'm glad I was able to have a project to show you how I like to use the fly stitches to make these little oak leaves, because it does make a very quick, fun little leaf. And we did the stem fill, or the 2 rows of stem stitches right next to each other. Lazy daisy, satin stitch, and I think that's it, just the stem. So thank you again for being a part of my stitching journey with me, and we will see you in November.